Looks like we've been busted. Let's get a divorce. We're going to move out of this house.
Yeah, divorce seems like the only option.
Yes, that's what I intend to do.
Intend to? Do you guys understand what you're doing? James, you're going to abandon your newborn child. Mom, you're going to leave Dad who has become physically disabled. Do you really understand how socially reprehensible that is?
Now, don't make it sound so terrible. We're moving out, but I have no intention of divorcing your father. Even I, who had resolved to stay calm, could not hide my confusion at my mother's response. My name is Emily, a 32-year-old office worker. I've been married to James for 3 years. We were colleagues at work, and when James joined the company as a new grad, he was assigned to my team. As I helped him with various aspects of the job, we got to know each other and started going out for meals after work. It was when James was getting the hang of his job. After one such meal, he asked me to marry him. I, an only child, had always wished for siblings, so I saw James as a kind of adorable younger brother. So, honestly, I was perplexed by his marriage proposal. The fact that I was 6 years older than him was part of my hesitation.
We haven't been together long, and I'm quite a bit older than you. Are you sure that's okay?
I honestly shared my hesitation with James. He answered without any doubt.
Age doesn't matter. I love you, Emily.
There was a conviction in James' eyes as he looked straight at me. It felt like a pure kind of love, and I decided to trust his words. After accepting James' proposal, things moved quickly. We immediately went to greet his parents. My in-laws welcomed me warmly. Like James, they were clear in their communication, which I found comforting. Next, I introduced James to my parents.
What a straightforward and polite young man. Such a refreshing and nice young man.
It was rare for my mother, who's a bit shy with new people, to praise a man so highly on the first meeting. Nevertheless, I was happy that James was well received. Your parents are so kind. I was a bit embarrassed with all the praise. It seemed that James liked my parents as well. And so, we were able to marry without any issues. After getting married, I continued to work for a while without quitting my job. Thanks to the company's consideration, James was transferred to another department, but my straightforward and honest husband was quickly liked in his new team. He actively helped with the household chores. Teaching him cooking, laundry, and cleaning one by one reminded me of when I taught him how to work when he was a new employee, and it was enjoyable.
Emily, your cooking is delicious. Did you learn from your mother?
My mom wasn't good at cooking. So I went to cooking classes to improve my skills.
Your meals are healthy, but they're also well seasoned.
Do you notice? My mom has always been into ballet. She was always mindful of her figure and posture. That's why she was always careful with the food she made.
Ballet. No wonder you're so beautiful and have such a great figure.
Next time we see her, you should tell her that. She'd be thrilled.
Yeah. Let's visit your family home next time.
I had heard that friends' husbands usually dislike going to their wives' family homes, but my husband was the opposite, eager to visit mine. As an only daughter who had moved out after marriage, it was a relief for me to be able to visit my parents' home regularly. My marriage to my husband could have been described as smooth sailing. But unfortunately, tragedy strikes without any warning. My father was involved in a sudden and tragic car accident, which left him paralyzed from the waist down. Now, he is confined to a wheelchair.
Emily, can you come by today? A care assistant comes during the day, but it's a lot to handle by myself at night.
I could easily imagine my mom, who's not exactly a whiz with housework, struggling to take care of him. If anything goes wrong and he gets hurt, it would be a disaster.
Understood. I'll come over after work.
When I told my husband I would be going to my parents' house, he immediately offered to drive me there himself.
You don't have to go out of your way. But thank you. It's a big help. Don't worry about it. It's only natural I help out, especially when your mom's having a tough time.
James didn't seem to mind at all. In fact, I was almost surprised by how readily he sprang into action without any hesitation.
Emily, thanks for coming. And James, too. I'm so glad you're here. Your dad will be so happy. Oh, don't mention it. I've been meaning to come by for a while. Emily, could you check on your dad? It's about time for his bathroom break.
Sure. I'll go to his room now.
Is there anything I can help with? Please, don't hesitate to ask. Could you help carry some stuff? Ever since Dad needed the wheelchair, it's been hard to move heavy things. I'll show you where they are. Absolutely. I'm on it.
James followed my mother without a hint of complaint. Watching his back, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for him.
Is James here, too?
Dad, are you awake? Or did we wake you with our talking?
It's fine, it's good to see you looking well. More importantly, Emily, I'm sorry to put you through all this trouble. Don't talk like that. Besides, Dad, do you need to go to the bathroom? Yeah, maybe you could take me.
As I pushed my father's wheelchair slowly, I remembered how he had supported me all the way through college. I realized it was my time to give back. After caring for my father, James and I headed home. As we sat down for a moment with a cup of tea, James made a suggestion.
Given the situation, why don't we move in with your parents? Judging by today, it's going to be tough for them to manage on their own. Maybe, but... Are you sure you're okay with that, James? I'm fine with it. We'll make it work.
His suggestion was a huge relief. Perhaps I was overthinking, but it felt like he had voiced exactly what I had been considering all along. In an interesting turn, my mom is actually quite a bit younger than my dad. My dad used to run a well-known trading company. Mom was once a ballet dancer, and Dad, who happened to see her perform with some colleagues, fell for her at first sight. He waited for the show to end, hastily sent an associate to buy flowers, and then began their courtship with a grand bouquet. Since the beginning of their marriage, my grandmother used to come over to help my mom, who was never good with household chores, with the cleaning and cooking. Now that I think about it, my cooking does seem to taste a lot like my grandmother's. My grandmother must have cooked with my mother's figure in mind, too. Mom was the kind of person who didn't care about much as long as she was pretty. Dad was indulgent towards such a mom, seemingly content just gazing at her beauty. I thought that's just how marriages are, but when I started living on my own in college, I realized our family values were off from what the world considered normal. I even started taking cooking classes to drill into myself that our way wasn't the only way. Mom couldn't even properly take care of Dad. I wasn't averse to Mom's pursuit of beauty, but considering Dad's current state, I had no choice but to be the one to care for him. Accepting my husband's suggestion, I thought it was a good opportunity and decided to tell him something. Hey, James. There's something I want to tell you about us living with my parents, I said.
Huh? What's that? He asked.
I think I'm pregnant, I revealed. Really? I'm gonna be a dad, he exclaimed. Indeed, so I'm really grateful that you suggested we move in with my parents. Thank you, I said. My husband was thrilled about the idea of us living at my childhood home and celebrated my pregnancy with excitement. When I immediately contacted my mom about it, she said, "That would be a huge help, come over tomorrow." "You're more than welcome." She seemed just as delighted as my husband. Thus, my husband and I moved in with my parents, and the four of us began our life together under one roof. As we moved back home, I quit my job and started preparing for childbirth while taking care of my father. Even my mom, who was indifferent to household chores, started to help buy shopping for groceries and daily necessities I noted down. My husband also cared for my father's health, and my dad seemed happy to have another man to talk to. It might sound ironic, but I feel like my father's injury has brought us closer together. Our family time, 4 of us together, was made possible by my husband's suggestion, and I want to thank him again for that.
Hey, James. I want to go shopping, can you drive me? It's a bit of a drive to this supermarket, but they've got really good deals on meat. Got it. I'll go with you anywhere.
It had become a weekend routine for my mom and husband to go shopping together. I wondered what people thought when they saw my youthful-looking mom and husband together. They might look more like siblings than mother and son. That's how young she looked. Time passed, and I safely gave birth to a healthy baby boy. My entire family celebrated and congratulated me on the birth. My father seemed exceptionally overjoyed, looking at his first grandchild with a smile I'd never seen before. Since it's a boy, there's no telling, he might take over the family business one day. With the family growing, I knew our home would become even livelier, but then tragedy strikes when you least expect it. One day, when I was about to go out to buy diapers and baby formula, the items were out of stock at our regular store, so I decided to return home and drive to another store that sells baby supplies. It was a holiday, and my husband was home, but I didn't want to bother him and risk him buying the wrong items, so I drove myself.
Why don't you hit up a cafe after shopping and take it easy for a bit?
My husband said as he saw me off at the front door. I remembered his face as he said that, caring for me, but I also had an odd feeling of dread. Caring for me, but I also had an odd feeling of dread. It hadn't been long since I'd given birth, and I wasn't fully recovered. Normally, my husband would insist on driving, even if I said I was fine. Without realizing it, I turned the car around and headed back home. I could come up with any excuse for why I came back so suddenly. As I approached the house, I heard a strange noise. Following the sound, it seemed to come from my mother's room upstairs. What used to be my father's spacious room on the second floor is now our bedroom, and with my father in a wheelchair, he has a room on the first floor. My mother's room is next to ours on the second floor. I first peeked quietly into my father's room. Dad was lying in bed as usual, in the middle of his nap. There's no sign of Mom and my husband on the first floor. The bad feeling I had since making a U-turn with the car had turned into a pit in my stomach. With each step I took up the stairs to the second floor, a strange noise grew louder. When I reached the second floor hallway, the strange noise was accompanied by a woman's heavy breathing. There was no room for doubt anymore. I was surprisingly calm. In front of my mother's room, my bad feeling turned into certainty. I took out my smartphone and pressed the record button for video just as I opened the door. There were my husband and my mother, naked and embracing. Silence followed. Anything I would say to the two of them, agape and silent, would be in vain. I said quietly,
"Anyway, both of you get dressed and come downstairs."
As I went down the stairs, I realized the camera was still recording and pressed the stop button. I don't want to watch what I recorded, but it will serve as evidence if needed.
When did you two start having an affair?
My husband wouldn't look at me, his head bowed. In contrast, my mother sat in a chair, crossing her legs with a defiant look.
I'll be clear since we're caught, it wasn't long after you two moved into this house. James told me he loved me. Is that so?
Sorry, Emily. Your mom was so attractive, I couldn't contain my feelings. I thought the one who couldn't contain their feelings was rather me. Even I, trying to appear calm, had my limits.
There's a line between feelings you can and can't control. It doesn't matter what's forgivable or not at this point, right, James?
Yes.
We knew it wasn't forgivable from the start. So we have a plan for if it ever came out, right, James?
Caught out. Let's divorce. We're gonna leave this house.
That's right, divorce is the only option.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
That's what you're gonna do. Do you two understand? James, you're abandoning your newborn child. Mom, you're leaving behind Dad, who's become disabled. Do you understand how socially reprehensible that is?
Oh, don't make it sound so dreadful.
We may leave this house, but I have no intention of divorcing your father.
Even I, trying to stay calm, couldn't hide my confusion at my mother's response.
Leave but not divorce, what do you mean? Do you have any idea how many years I've been married to your father? As his wife, I have a right to his inheritance. If I divorce here, I won't get what's due to me.
Incredibly, my mother refused to divorce my father just to lay claim to his inheritance. Indeed, even if they live apart, being married entitles her to a share of the estate.
How utterly greedy, it's despicable. I'm simply asserting my rights. If there's something to be gained, why on earth would I divorce and miss out on it?
I was so astounded by her avarice that anger didn't even begin to cover it.
James, I am absolutely divorcing you.
Until that moment, my husband had been looking down, but perhaps moved by my mother's words, he looked up and gazed at me intently.
I understand, but depending on the conditions, I might refuse the divorce. Conditions? What conditions? The condition is that you and your dad accept that your mom won't divorce your dad. I'm fine with divorcing you, but in exchange, I want your mom and your dad's marriage to stay as it is.
Evidently, he was being manipulated by her.
How can you expect me to accept such terms? How corrupt can you both be? If that's the case, then I can't go through with divorcing you either.
No need to worry about child support. So, what'll it be? I realized I was in a losing position. But I couldn't give in to my husband and mother's demands.
I can't make this decision on my own. I'll discuss it with my dad before we decide.
With that said, I made my way to my father's room. The door to my father's room was slightly open. Before I could say anything, my father signaled me to be quiet and started speaking softly.
Emily, don't worry about me and proceed with the divorce from James as soon as possible.
I was sure he had been listening to our conversation.
But if I do that, you won't be able to leave that woman. It's okay. I have a plan. Do as I say and divorce that man right away.
His physical strength may have faded, but there was a definite vigor in my father's eyes and his words carried weight. Following his directions seemed undoubtedly the right thing to do. I followed my father's advice, agreeing to divorce James and to accept the preservation of my parents' marriage.
When that man passes, make sure you tell me right away.
With those final words, my mother and former husband left the family home.
Dad, I'm sorry. All of this is happening because of me. It's all because I married that man. Don't worry about anything. Soon enough, those two will receive their just deserts for their wrongdoings.
I was unable to grasp what my father had in mind. Yet, I could tell he had a definite strategy in his eyes.
What's your plan, Dad? I'm not naive, the plan goes like this.
And so he explained his plan to me, slowly and carefully.
So that's it, we can certainly punish them now.
Since then, I've been able to live my life without worrying about those two. During the day, I asked a caregiver to take care of my father, and I started working again as a company employee. My son grew up healthy and strong. I got used to taking care of my father after returning from work. My dad played a lot with my grandson. When I saw them playing happily together, I realized that my son had something of my father in him, more than my ex-husband. I hope that when my son grows up, he'll be like my dad. During these busy days, 3 years passed. My father had been feeling unwell for a while and had been hospitalized. And after being hospitalized, his condition never improved, and he passed away quietly. I was calm. I had been prepared since my father was admitted to the hospital. Looking at my father's peacefully resting face, I felt a sense of resolution about what was to begin. I immediately began arranging my father's funeral. Many people attended my father's funeral. He was a man well liked by many. And among the many attendees, I spotted those two.
It's been a while. Good to see you're doing well.
What are you two doing here?
When my man passes away, it's only right to show up at his funeral. After abandoning your own husband and grandson, you've got some nerve showing up here. You know, Emily, the thing between a man and a woman is bound by instinct. Rationality doesn't apply to those who are drawn together by instinct. Do you get it? If that's what you think, then why come here? You two should just keep cuddling up forever.
As if he had been waiting for the moment, my ex-husband butted in.
We came to fulfill a promise. A promise? As I've said before, your mom has a right to her husband's inheritance.
That's right.
I came to claim the inheritance as promised. Tell me quickly how much I'm getting.
When they brought up the inheritance, I had already decided what to say in response.
I understand. However, there's not a single cent of inheritance for you to receive. Huh? What nonsense are you talking about? Don't try to act tough by lying, Emily. She should be entitled to a statutory share. There's no inheritance for someone who is already divorced to receive. When did I ever divorce that man? I don't remember agreeing to a divorce. Mom, have you forgotten? You once forced a divorce paper on my father with your name signed on it.
The faces of my confident mother and ex-husband seemed to twitch a bit. I continued, pressing the point.
My father kept the divorce papers you forced on him. Not long after you left the family home, I filed the divorce papers. There's no expiration date on a divorce paper. This means that at the time of submitting the divorce papers during my father's lifetime, the divorce was finalized. You are nothing more than a stranger with no relation to my father. You're not eligible for any inheritance. Can you understand that? Not by instinct, but by reason?
I could see my mother's and ex-husband's faces turn pale.
Do you get it now? That's why I have nothing more to say to you. This is not a place where you should set foot.
Before I knew it, a large number of attendees who admired my father had gathered around us. And all of them directed hostility towards the two who had betrayed and hurt my father and me. finally grasping the situation, my mother and ex-husband left the scene quickly without a word. From what I heard, my mother and ex-husband had been living a life of luxury far beyond their means. Naturally, my mother quickly ran through her savings and even went into debt to maintain her lavish lifestyle. At their wits' end, they heard of my father's passing and had hoped to use the expected inheritance to pay off their debts. But their plan had completely fallen through. I have no idea where those two are or how they're living now. What becomes of them is of no concern to me. I started working at the trading company my dad ran a few years back. My dad, when he was alive, took the time to teach me the tricks of the trade. Thanks to his efforts, I was able to take over as president of the company he nurtured. Now, as president, I'm raising my son while protecting the company my dad built. Day by day, I see more of my late father in my son's face. Someday, I hope my son will take over the company that my dad raised and I've been safeguarding and make it even greater. But even if my son chooses a different path, I'm gonna support his dreams all the way. As a parent, it's my duty to be there the day my son stands on his own 2 feet. No matter what, I'll never betray my son, because that's what being a parent is all about.